Well, there's a story told about little Johnny. It's always little Johnny, right? Little Johnny attended his very first wedding, and his younger cousin kind of tagged along with him. And when the wedding was over, Johnny's cousin looked at him and said, "Johnny, how many women can you marry?" And without hesitation, Johnny said, 16. You can marry 16 women. And the little boy, the cousin, said, "Where did you get that?" And Johnny said, "Well, the preacher said that. He said 16. Didn't you listen?" And the little boy, "No, I didn't hear that. Tell me, how did you get it?" "Well, the preacher said you gotta add them up. You got 4 better, and you got 4 worse, and you got 4 richer, and you got 4 poorer. That's 16. Cowboy and a Southern Baptist preacher were on a flight from Tulsa to Austin, and after a bit, the cowboy leaned forward, took his hat off, and asked the flight attendant for a whiskey, which the flight attendant brought back. And then, being polite, she inquired of the preacher if he wanted the same. And the preacher says, "Oh my gosh, no! I would rather an ill-begotten woman made a pass at me than liquor passed over these lips." To which the cowboy immediately handed the whiskey back to the flight attendant and said, "I didn't know we had a choice." Last one, I promise. A couple were discussing what their son might be when he grew up. And the father said to his wife, "I have an idea. Tonight I'm going to put a $10 bill, I'm going to put a bottle of bourbon, and I'm going to put a Bible on the kitchen table, and if he takes the money, he's going to be a banker. If he takes the bourbon, he'll probably be a bartender, and if he picks up the Bible, I just might believe he's going to be a preacher." Then they hid, waited, and watched till their teenage son came home, and he sauntered into the kitchen, he sat down at the table, and he kind of looked, queried the items that were sitting there before him. He picked up the $10 bill and he set it back down. He picked up the bourbon, he looked at it, read the labels, took a sniff, put it back down, and he picked up the Bible and kind of leafed through it for a few moments, and he put it back down. And Mom and Dad, and they're hiding, looked at each other, wondering what would happen next. And the young man stood up, took the $10 bill, put it in his pocket, took the bourbon, grabbed the bottle, put the Bible under his arm, and walked out. And the wife looked at her husband and said, "What's that mean? What's that mean? He didn't take one. He took them all." And the father says, "Well, my guess is when he grows up, he'll be a politician." Well, some of you, at least those of you who were present last Sunday, thought that the knock-knock stuff was too much, and now I'm giving you this. When will it stop? Well, I suggest to you that that's precisely what the crowds thought as Jesus spoke. When is this just gonna stop? Not in regards to poor jokes, but Jesus made these outlandish, ridiculous claims and told these far-out stories that were very idealistic. Some of them were funny, some of them were interesting, but they're never going to come to pass. That's just not going to happen. Good thinking. When is he going to stop? When is he going to get real? You know, you remember the story he told about the young man, graduated from law school at Columbia, lived in Hackensack, New Jersey, was very successful. He was an upstanding guy, belonged to the Rotary and all those kinds of things, and he came to Jesus. He wanted to follow Jesus, and what did Jesus say? "You can follow me, but first you got to go home and give it all away." How outlandish. I mean, who's going to do that? How about the other time? He talked about getting into heaven, and he said it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. Now, what sense does that make? That's just foolish. And now today he implies that my neighbor who's a good farmer and a good manager and a good business person is foolish, he implies that he's foolish to put up a second storage shed to hold his bumper crop. Not building a storage shed when you got more to store. Now that's foolish. You can never have enough storage units on 34th Street. That's what any smart person would do. Why, you store the grain, you never know what the international market's going to be like, and next year there might be another drought in Egypt or Syria. He'll make a killing selling that grain that he stored. That's just smart business. You got to keep something in the rears, like I taught my kids with a piggy bank. You got to save for a rainy day. That's what I say. Now, if you're real quiet, like me, you can hear the people whisper to each other these kinds of comments. This Jesus is loony. When is he going to stop? Talking about my neighbor, that's a pretty harsh thing. Jesus doesn't really know my neighbor. I watch my pennies. After all, you never know what's coming down the highway, do you? You never know. We don't know. But that's precisely what Jesus wanted them to think about. None of us know what's coming down the highway. We only know today and the now and so forth. We don't know what's coming at us. The question is, then why do we assume it could be the worst? Why is that at the forefront of our mind, that the other shoe's got to drop and it's going to be bad? Because behind that lies another and a deeper question of, if we're always worried about that and we're always trying to protect ourselves, don't worry about it, God, I got a handle on it and I'll look for you if it doesn't work out. When we do that, isn't that a denial of faith? The flip side is, I got to do this because something bad might happen, but where is God in that equation, and where is your faith in that equation? Early in his ministry, Jesus said, just look at the birds of the field and the flowers of the earth. They don't have 401ks. God takes care of them. And aren't they beautiful? Why, God knows what we need even before we ask, it says. So why do we worry about it? Where in the world is your faith? Now, we can discuss and debate the merits of what I'm saying or what the texts say until the cows come home. But the point is, why put off for tomorrow what could be done today? When we all know that tomorrow may never come. What Scripture says in the Psalms, we are but one breath away. It's just true, we don't know. But instead of thinking this way, we tend to err on the side of enough might never be enough. I've got to have just a little more. I've got to just prepare. And you know what? I get that. With my health and my condition, my greatest fear is the day that I can't afford or can't get covered by health care and the cost of that. It scares me. I get that. But I also have to ask, if that's what dictates what I might or could do today, if that's what dictates my whole plans and my identity and all those kinds of things, what good is it? What good is it? I'm always living in fear of that which may never be, may not come. And where is your faith? Where is it that believes that somehow you will get through, somehow God will not let you? You know, the book of Isaiah, I think it's the 40th chapter, the beginning, that says, when you pass through deep water, I will not let it overwhelm you, and when you go through fire, I will not allow it to burn you. Where is your faith? You know, if faith has gotten us this far, even to today, why would we doubt it would get us further? But that further, we can become so obsessed with it that it almost becomes idolatrous. It becomes an idol. It is something we worship. You know, my parents lived through the Great Depression, and when my father died at 72 and my mother lived to 88, they bought their first house when my father retired with the little bit of inheritance that my mother got, and the rest was all Social Security. And when my dad died, you know, my mother went over her bank account like nobody's business. I mean, that was the big fear. She may have only had 5 items on that account monthly, but she went over it, and it worried and it stressed her. And yet we would say, you know, Mom, we'll take care of you. You don't have to worry. But, you know, we become obsessed. It's almost an idolatrous thing that we worship what's put away for a rainy day. If you go to Denver in the First United Methodist Church right downtown, it's probably the most historic church, or one of, in the whole city. It's built in an opera style, and they have a fantastic organ there. The pipes, of which in some cases the bass pipes are probably 3 stories or more tall. I mean, they're immense. You have to go down in the basement and they'll play them for you. It just rattles the building, and the little treble pipes at the top. But the story behind the organ that they tell on their tours is that was given to the church by a man who made a fortune when the silver rush was taking place in Colorado, just like the gold rush in California, the silver rush in Colorado. And he purchased that organ, gave it to the church, but subsequently silver crashed and he lost everything. And on their tours, they tell you that he was asked if he regretted using that money to buy that organ, and his response was, no, I would have just lost that money too. Of the 4 churches I have served over my career, 3 of them fired my predecessors. Such churches are so much fun. In a not so funny way, because they carry with them loads of residual stuff. You know, I somewhat jokingly say, you know, when a shark tastes blood, they never forget it. And so as you go in, you try to stay neutral, and you assure them that the past is the past and you're about the future, and you listen to both sides, and you know, you try to heal the church, bring it together, and move on. Because you have to handle the stuff as positively as you can, knowing that it could go negatively or positively. It could go either way. And my last church in particular had gone through that, and it was a bloody, bloody congregational meeting with the Fours on this side and the Gints on this side and their attorneys right there. National Church had said to me, as best they could, if you accept the call and things go south, you'll love this. We'll do our best to help you get out of there. Yeah, okay. But what I would share with you is, given that background, on the night of my installation, and beautiful, beautiful installation service with choir and handbells and all those things, after it was done, many people came up to say welcome and congratulations and all this, and someone touched my shoulder, and I turned around, and it was a conference minister who I'd never known, not met. She was never my conference minister then or in the future, and she looked at me and she said, Keith, just remember, God never leaves you anywhere to mock you. God never leads us anywhere to make fun of us, to be the fool for other people, to look stupid. God never leads you anywhere to mock you. Just keep the faith. Keep the faith. Or, as that song we all know and love to sing, through many dangers, toils, and snares we have already come. 'Twas grace that brought us safe thus far, and grace will lead us home. My point? Well, I have two. I have two things I hope you think about. And the first one is that only you can say, when is enough enough? Nobody else can say that, but that's yours. When is enough enough? And when we don't get sidetracked by the smorgasbord of other voices calling us to things that are inconsequential or might be or sound really good, but when is enough enough? And the second thing is, never put off for tomorrow what you could, should, and can do today. Otherwise, it might never get done. Amen. And speaking of tomorrow, we're going to take our offering now. And hope you do well today, right? We're not going to receive a formal offering, but there are plates as you leave. You can leave a gift at the front of the back door exits. Of course, we encourage you to give online, either electronically from your bank to our account or by Venmo or whatever is listed here. There's a QR code. But know that your support is important. And as I said last week, these are the toughest weeks for the church, these low kind of dog days of the summer. So we hope you'll remember the church and keep us in your thoughts and giving.